Hello and welcome to the Root of All Stuff. I'm your host, Kevin McDuffie. Joining me as always is my colleague and co-host, Mr. Josh Lutz. Say hello, Josh.
How we doing, world?
And on our last episode, we discussed the importance of critical thinking. We went through some fallacies and the importance of science and things like that. And Josh, can you think of an organization here in America that perfectly encapsulates critical thinking skills and science as a whole?
I'd have to say NASA.
Bingo. And that's what we're going to get on today is NASA. So, for all the NASA fans out there and all the NASA haters out there, even though I don't know why you would be a NASA hater unless you're just plumb crazy, but they do exist, usually in the form of people suffering from lack of critical thinking skills, flat earthers, etc. So, but we're going to talk about NASA today, and we'll go through some of its founding and little history in NASA, some of their missions, some current things going on, and I look forward to a mission coming up here soon. Matter of fact, they have a launch tomorrow, which is pretty exciting, and looking to the future a little bit of NASA, what they got planned for the future. So, without further ado, Josh, do you know when NASA first started?
I do not. I want to say that the organization that was there before NASA was in the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, it was there from the organization that was before NASA was the NACA, and it was founded on March 3rd, 1915, and it ceased operations on October 1st, 1958. So you're right there. But do you remember why there was a big jolt to start NASA, the superseding agency to NACA? Do you know what our big fear was? What was going on in the world around 57, 50?
That was the Cold War and escalations between the U.S. and Russia.
Right. And also, Russia launched the first satellite into space. What was it?
Sputnik.
Right. And that scared the holy shit out of all of us here in America because we didn't know if they were spying on us, looking at us. What? Now we know that Sputnik was, just flying around orbit going beep, 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 but at the time we didn't know, and that's exactly scary stuff. So it definitely led to, much innovation in America to try to catch up and actually, try to stay ahead of the Russians, which we didn't do a very good job at for a really long time. A lot of people don't know, but throughout history, Russia, during the space race, had a lot of firsts.
They used to trash us on the regular.
I mean, they were shitting all over us. I mean, it was it was bad. A lot of people don't know. Like, it's funny. I talk to people out in public sometimes, and if we get into the conversation of NASA and space and things like that, and astronauts, if I ask some people, who was the first man in space, it's amazing the answers you get to that question, because you'll hear, Neil Armstrong or wasn't it Alan Shepard? No, it was neither one of them. Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon. Alan Shepard was the first American in space, but the first man in space, like out of all of humanity, was a man named Yuri Gagarin, and he was Russia. So Russia had the first man in space. They got us there. They also had the first woman in space. They also had the first spacewalk, the first docking. They were kicking our ass for a long time. So we had to get something together, and we started a federal association to the government called NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So what that did is it got a group of the world's smartest people, or the country's smartest people at the time, together, and we pulled off some pretty amazing things. Now, a lot of, don't get me wrong, I can't think of another organization, at least government organization in history, that has inspired so much hope, so many dreams, so many children to wonder, so much education, people to think about new things and learn new things than NASA. I can't think of a single one that's done as much in any of those fields as NASA. But, it's crazy because the whole reason it was started was not for the hopes and dreams that people think it was. Like, people wonder why we went to the moon or why we haven't been back to the moon. It's really politics, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
as sad as that is to say, it's governments.
It was a fear of non-superiority.
Yeah. And America, we don't very much like to be second at damn near anything,
No.
even though we were unfortunately on a lot of things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on America here, folks. America is the greatest country in the world, in my opinion, and I'm glad to live here as a patriot and an American. So at the same time, people also wondered, because the last time we went to the moon was Apollo 17 in 1972, and we haven't been back to the moon since. And people often wonder, like, well, wow, why the hell did we quit going? Well, it was government ran. Like, whenever the Soviet Union, was starting to fade out, and we beat them to the moon, they just didn't want to fund it anymore, unfortunately. And so NASA got its budget cut, and that kind of puts a damper on going to the moon. But they also did well with the budget they got after the fact, and we also got the International Space Station, the Space Shuttle, Hubble Space Telescope, things that have been amazing and quite progressive in the way of science and helping us understand and develop new technologies for here on Earth. And that's another thing I want to get at today. You have a lot of people who are NASA haters, and what I find most of the time, most NASA haters are haters because I don't feel that they really understand what NASA is, or how it benefits them and all of us here on Earth. Every human, not just Americans, but all across the world. Like, it is amazing, the technology and science and basically innovation that's come from that single place of NASA. And when we quit going to the moon, people also wondered, well, when will business catch up and we'll just do it commercially? Like, some rich guy could just pay to go to the moon. And it's taken until recently for us to really catch up and for people to have that technology. With now we have SpaceX, which is working closely with NASA. You have Blue Origin and several other private entities that are venturing into space now, but so far haven't got back to the moon. Current plan for that is 2024, and I'm hoping we get there. But that's fingers crossed and hoping we have a budget for it. But what do you got, Josh? What do you want to get on NASA?
I just want to talk about, the structure of the organization, some of the things they do, exactly how much went in, like, in terms of technology, how far they came.
Yeah.
And just a lot of people don't know exactly how much work went into, let's take, for example, the space shuttle program.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly how much it took to get one of those to the pad and off the pad, or the technology involved. I mean, you got to think, we went from 1903,
Mm-hmm.
the very first manned flight,
Mm-hmm.
Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. 66 years
Well,
later.
That was the first airplane flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
66 years later, Neil Armstrong steps onto the moon.
Mm-hmm.
It took 66 years to go.
That's quite a leap.
Canvas glider.
Right. Well, think about it. 1903 to the 1940s, when World War II kicked off, from 1903 to World War I. We came out with amazing technology just in that span. We went from the Wright Flyer to a P-51 Mustang in a very short amount of time. And we went from that to fighter jets in a really short amount of time, and supersonic aircraft, and then we went on with building rockets that sent us out into space and doing this amazing stuff. It is quite a large amount of innovation in a short amount of time. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. What would you say?
No, you're good. You're good. And that's what I want to kind of hit on a little bit is just, a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of people don't realize exactly how touch and go that was.
Oh yeah, it was. There were some mishaps, folks. Like nothing's perfect. That's why we test these things and try to do the best we can. And as you brought up yesterday, which I thought was a good point, space exploration, especially human space exploration, can be quite difficult and dangerous. It's not like taking a walk down the road. There's a lot more to it. But real quick, just because we haven't answered it yet and we brought it up already, and that's my fault for getting sidetracked. Sorry, everybody. Back to NASA's founding. NASA was founded on July 29th, 1958. So that answers that. And like I say, it was founded because we were scared as hell of the Russians, because they launched the first satellite into orbit, and we didn't know if they were spying on us. We didn't realize how far ahead of us they actually were. And we were just scared to death of the Russians. They were basically kicking our ass, but we didn't know how bad. Because you think about it, when you're in a Cold War against another nation, or think about it, every nation has its secrets. And even though America and the CIA and FBI and our intelligence organizations are very good at finding out information, there's still shit we don't know. And the fear is what don't we know? What do they have that they could potentially wipe us out with, or, take over? We didn't know. So the
Russians were very, very good at keeping secrets.
Yeah, they still are.
Very good at hiding things. We didn't know about Sputnik until after it had launched, and everybody's like, what's that beeping sound in the air?
Yeah.
It's a man-made satellite. And then we were all scrambling going, what the hell just happened?
Yep.
Who dropped the ball on this?
Right. So, and that's why we founded NASA, and we had to catch up or try to get ahead of it and, basically defend ourselves and prove that once and for all we are the best, because America, fuck you.
I think Mike Tyson said it best. He said, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth.
That's true. And
Russia was throwing haymakers.
Yeah, they gave us a black eye at the beginning of that space race for sure. Actually, for the majority of it, they were pounding on us pretty good. But like I say, if it weren't for the development or the founding of NASA, who knows where we'd be? I mean, hell, we'd probably be speaking Russian right now for all we know. I mean, because, don't take your adversary or enemy lightly. Russia has some amazing scientists and engineers, and we found that out since the fact, because after the Cold War ended and we actually started working with the Russians in space, which is ironic, I know, but we'll get into that as well. We actually borrowed a lot of their rocket technology for our newer rockets, which is pretty wild to think about. But I remember when we ran our pilot episode, Josh, we had a list of questions running off when we ran our pilot. And the first one you asked was, how high is space? Do you recall that?
I do.
All right. So I kind of wanted to get into that for our listeners and try to help them understand how high space is. So what we would say, it really is a floating definition if you think about it. Funny, pardon the pun, no pun intended with the floating, but in space. But if you think about it, we're in space right now. The Earth is a planet that's just flying through space around our sun. We are all on spaceship Earth right now. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about in their day to day because, it feels like to us here on the ground on Earth that space is this far away, very distant, other separate thing. And that's not the case. We're all in space all the time. That's where we live. And it's hard to fathom that sometimes just because of our scale of how big the universe is and how small we are. But one way to define how do you know if you've reached space? Now, the way NASA would describe it, or the Russians back in the day would describe it's when you leave Earth's atmosphere. Okay, because we had planes flying around in the air. Now, yeah, technically, if you want to define it that way, yeah, they're flying through space too, but they're not really in space. They're still in Earth's atmosphere. You see, it's a very squishy definition that it's hard to fathom sometimes and make sense of. But so it was also a problem until they finally just set a standard scale for it. Now we say you have entered space when you have went across what they call an imaginary line that they call the Kármán line. And that is 100 kilometers straight up, which is 62 miles for us Americans, straight up. Okay. So, of course, the atmosphere is not a very solid structure. It's gas, right? I mean, it's gases floating around. So some areas of atmosphere are a little higher than others, at some areas and lower than in others. So basically what we did is we took the average of where the atmosphere ends around the atmosphere around the Earth, and we called that the Kármán line. And now that's what if you cross, you are now in space as we define it. So there have been, talking about planes, which it was an airplane, but it ran on a rocket engine. There was an airplane that actually made it to space, and it was really fast. Do you have any idea?
I want to say it was the SR-71.
No. SR-71 did fly high, but it wasn't quite that high or that fast. And the SR-71 was a jet-powered aircraft. The X-15 is the rocket aircraft that actually made it into space for brief amounts of time, and of course, very, very controlled. But yes, there has been airplanes in space, but the reason that you can't fly a conventional aircraft in space is, well, what is the thing that you need for an airplane to fly, Josh?
Air.
Right. There ain't a whole lot of that in space outside of the atmosphere. The air gets really thin at higher altitudes as well, so you have to have some pretty amazing performance just to get up near the edge. Now, while I'm thinking about it, a lot of people may be listening to this right now, and they're NASA haters, okay? Or they're science haters, or they might think they might claim to be science lovers, but they actually just love pseudoscience because, lack of critical thinking skills. And now I'm not shitting on everyone here, but if you are that, you may not know that's you, okay? You may think that you are perfectly logical, just like everybody else, and but here's how you can tell. Here's how you can tell. This is a simple test me and Josh run to see whether someone is going to be open-minded and have at least the required critical thinking skills to have a intelligent and good faith conversation about things. And Josh will tell you that we've done this a few times, and it's usually how we begin conversations if we reach a point of debate or we don't agree, or someone doesn't agree with what we're saying, or we don't agree with what they're saying. We run into an altercation, something like that. So the quickest way to tell if someone is using critical thinking skills, Josh, we'll run through this example together. All right. So we did this on the last episode, but it's a good practice area for people to run this experiment. Here's how you do it. Let's say me and Josh are having a conversation, and Josh makes a claim. Okay, Josh, make a claim. I don't care. Make any claim.
Oh, the earth is round.
Okay. Now, there is one. There are two forms of answer. It may not be verbatim, but you'll get one or the other here. You'll get, if someone disagrees with your claim, you can. Here's what I would ask when he makes the claim the earth is round. What would it take to change your mind? And there's two responses to that. First one being nothing. Nothing. I know it is. I know it for sure. And nobody's ever going to change my mind. To me, that's end of conversation. It's done. That person is closed-minded, and they are not going to hear what you have to say. They're already just waiting. They're already thinking up the next argument to say when you're done talking, because they're not even listening to what you're saying. And the other is, what is the other answer, Josh? Let's say, because I know you possess these critical thinking skills. So you made the claim the earth is round. So I ask you, what would it take to change your mind?
Proof.
What qualifies as proof?
You would have to show me empirical evidence that I could not disprove.
Right. Well, not that you couldn't disprove. Well, right. Well, I get what you're saying. Yes. But that's the whole point of science. That's the critical thinking that we do right there, is we're always trying to disprove the claims made so that we can get as close as we can to what is true for all of us in the universe. And for the NASA haters, they make a lot of fallacious claims. For one, NASA fakes everything. Like, oh, the moon landing was fake, man. Man, if you just, you don't even have to have evidence of that. If you just have some critical thinking skills, like, think about it. To what end? Why fake it? Do you know how much paperwork? The paperwork alone to fake that wouldn't be worth faking it. Just you see what I'm saying? It just doesn't add up. Another thing is we all saw the rocket. We all, or well, I did. People who were at the launch or watching television, they all watched the same thing. The Saturn V go up, and it didn't come back. It didn't hit a dome. Sorry.
Didn't fall off the edge.
Yeah, where's the edge? Now, see, I'm not trying to just shit all over flat Earth. Well, yes, I am. I'm sorry. If you're a flat earther, please say something. I will be glad to have this conversation with you and hopefully enlighten you. I will try to be respectful, but you have to know in 2020, if you don't know the Earth is round, man, you need to think about things a little differently and figure out what science is and figure out what evidence is. But all right, beyond that, but here's the thing, flat earthers, if my mind is open, I am open to changing my mind, and it wouldn't be very hard to do. Bring me some evidence. I tell you what I'll do. I'll make a bet right now here to the whole flat earth community. If any of them can go to Antarctica or wherever you think the edge is, a lot of them think it's Antarctica. If you can go there and you can go to the edge, which of course they make excuses. Oh, we can't go there because they stop you from going or some shit, even though Guys, I can go on the internet right now and book a cruise to Antarctica. Just saying, you can get there. So here's the challenge. Here's all it would take to literally convince me and everybody else in the scientific community of your claim. Go to the edge and take a picture. Go to the edge with a Polaroid camera and take a picture of the edge. Bring it to me. If I get that picture, like the actual Polaroid, bring me the actual Polaroid with that picture on it, my mind is open to change. Not only that, I'll tell you what, I'll make the deal with you. If you bring me that picture and you can show me documentation of your trip, you like how you got there, what you did, what was your, do your experiment, like, but document it well and accurately, no bullshit. If you can bring that to me and it's not bullshit, and I can replicate your results, I'll give you my house. That's how sure I am.
You have heard it from the man himself.
That's how sure I am that the fucking earth is not flat, guys. And the problem is it shouldn't even take that, guys. It shouldn't even take that. You can run even more simple and easier experiments to prove to yourself that the earth is round. I mean, go look at the bottom of a well in one city at one time of day and set up a camera, and go to another city that has a deep well and put another camera on it. See how the light enters the well at different times of the day. There's one experiment you can run. Better yet, just mathematically, GMM over R squared. You don't get the R, which is a radius, without a circle, guys. A round circle. Now, their claim is, well, yeah, but it's a dish shape, but it's flat, like a flat circle. No, it's a sphere. It's round, okay? And the reason we know that, because if you use that equation for gravity, GMM over R squared, it wouldn't work on your disk because there's not enough mass. I don't even know how gravity would work on that shit. It would just, we'd all be walking around the edges, I guess. I don't know. That it just wouldn't work out. And we'd be getting pulled in all sorts of funky directions. But of course, their whole claim is they want you to. All right, so there's a thing in science about proving negatives. You can't prove a negative, guys. Like, all right, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, Josh. Hey, Josh, unicorns exist. Do you believe me?
You had proof?
Honestly. No. Just yes or no. Honestly, do you believe me?
No.
Unicorns exist. I'm sorry, what?
No.
You can't prove they don't. But that's just it. Of course you can't prove that anything doesn't exist. You can't prove a negative. You see what I'm saying? You can't prove anything doesn't exist. For all you know, there's a giant alien head on the far side of Jupiter screaming down at us. No, all right, but here, we can actually look at Jupiter and see that it's not there. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It might just be deep in the clouds or something, but not likely, guys. Little critical thinking goes a long ways here, you see. But sorry, got a little sidetracked on that tangent. But back to NASA. Sorry.
We do that a lot here.
Yeah. We're liable to go in any direction. Sorry about that. Back to, hey, that's another thing. Every other celestial body is also round. Weird. So back to the moon. So, or space. Sorry, we were talking about space and how high it was. So, let's see. A good question that my kid actually asked me the other day was, how many people have been to space? Because that's another thing I hear. It's a good question because it's a thing that I hear often when I get into a discussion about human space exploration with folks in public. It's, I hear the argument. Well, people, we've already done all that. There's been plenty of people been, it ain't that big a deal anymore. Okay, guys. Well, so as of April 9th of this year, 2020, and there's been more since then, but as of April 9th, a total of 566 people from 41 countries have gone into space. Now, granted, 566, yeah, that's a lot of folks. All right, okay. But when you compare that to the population of human beings on this planet, few billion, that is quite a small amount, guys. That means it's not something that you can just do every day, that people just do every day. Anyway, well, NASA does, but that's because they specialize in it. But I'm saying, if you think that it's easy to get to space, I highly recommend you go out and find out all the rules and regulations to it and build your own spacecraft and go to space and see how hard it is, actually, because I promise it's harder than you think it is. Even if you have a good idea, it's harder than you think it is. And all right, interesting facts. Of those 566 people has been in space since April 9th, before April 9th, sorry, 3 people completed a suborbital flight, meaning they didn't get in Earth's orbit. They went out to space and came back down. 562 people reached low Earth orbit, which is where the ISS is, going around the Earth in Earth's orbit. And only 24 people have traveled beyond low Earth orbit. And half of that, only 12 have ever walked on the moon. 12 people out of the billions that has lived since we've done that to now. I mean, that is pretty phenomenal. And that, I hope that takes into scale why there's a reason for that. There's a reason why we don't just go every day. It's not easy, guys. There's a lot that goes into this. So much. I mean, engineering, science, and computing. I mean, it is massive. And given the technology we had when we first did it, it makes it that much more incredible and shows the tenacity and ingenuity that NASA had back in the 60s and 70s during the space race. Because, I mean, the computing power they had back then, you have more computing power in your pocket right now if you have a smartphone. I mean, it's pretty wild if you think about it. That's, back at the time of the space race, during the lunar landings, computers took up the size. Like, even the most powerful computers were like the size of a huge room, and could only do very simple computations. It was quite phenomenal that people were working this out with like slide rules. They didn't even have digital calculators to work on. I mean, it is phenomenal what these men and women did. Now, and those 12 people that walked on the moon, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Josh, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want you to give me as many of those 12 people as you can, their names. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, and it's okay. Well, there's one that everybody knows, and that was the first guy.
Neil Armstrong.
Bingo. Right. Neil Armstrong was the first man to set foot on the moon.
Buzz Aldrin.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Conrad.
Yep, Pete Conrad. Charles Pete Conrad. Yep.
I want to say Charles Duke, but
Yep. That's correct. Charles Duke Jr. landed on the moon.
Those are the 4 I can come up with off the top of my head.
Okay, so you got Neil Armstrong. You got Buzz Aldrin. you got Pete Conrad, and you got Charles Duke. I'll give you a hint. Another one was the first American in space.
John Glenn.
Nope. John Glenn never landed on the moon.
Oh yeah, that's right.
In that group though, you're in the right stuff if you catch my pun. Alan Shepard.
Alan Shepard.
Yeah.
Which mission was he?
That's a good question, actually.
15.
I tell you what, it's worth a Google. And it's sad that I don't know that off the top of my head, but I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm not 100% sure what number he was. Let's see, Alan Shepard. I know it was Freedom 7 was the first time when he was the first American in space, but I'm not sure which Apollo he was on. Let's see. Apollo 14.
14.
Yeah.
What about Ken Mattingly?
Ken Mattingly was supposed to be on Apollo 13, but
Right,
they said he had the measles. Right.
I didn't know if they let him go on a later mission. I know that he flew the space shuttle.
He never landed on the moon, unfortunately. I don't know if he went on any other missions, but I know he didn't land on the moon, which is unfortunate for him. But so I'll go ahead and give you the list. There's 12 people that have landed on the moon. Josh named a good many of them. So let's see. We got Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Pete Conrad, Alan Bean, Alan Shepard, Edgar Mitchell, David Scott, James Irwin, John Young, Charles Duke Jr. or Charles Duke. I don't know if he likes the junior. Harrison Jack Schmidt, and Eugene Cernan, otherwise known as Gene Cernan. And Gene Cernan was the last man on the moon in 1972. And unfortunately, he has passed on as well. But that's what I'm saying, guys. It's been 1972 was the last time we went. It's 2020. It's been a while. About time to go back, wouldn't you say, Josh?
I would.
So, since I'm running off on crazy tangents today, and sorry, listeners, for that. If I ask a question and I actually don't get to the answer, please feel free to email us. I will get back to it. I know I run on these tangents, but it happens. When I'm adamant about something, I get to, as my wife would say, rambling. But, that's what we're doing here. We're having a good conversation, just trying to get to the root of all stuff. So, Josh, what was one of your topics that you wanted to get into that we discussed at the beginning that we hadn't got to yet?
The whole implementation of the organization, how much work it takes.
Oh, yeah.
Even in modern days, we've gone from Apollo 11's source code. The code that took us to the moon for the very first time was handwritten.
Mm-hmm.
That is mind-boggling.
It is. And not only that, people think of NASA, they're like, well, where's NASA? Here's the thing. It ain't just in one location. It is a huge infrastructure, guys, of different facilities. There's 10 NASA facilities in the U.S. I mean, they're all over the place. The most commonly known ones, of course, because of Apollo and the launches that we have there, is Kennedy Space Center, at Cape Canaveral, where we launched the Apollo missions. But then, you got Johnson Space Center in Houston. You got Huntsville, Alabama, Rocket City down there. You got the Ames Research Center. You got, I mean, there's 10 of them. If you don't know them, go look them up. I mean, but the thing is, each of them are doing specific things that benefit all of us. And that was another one we wanted to get to was a lot of space haters. They're just like, I don't know why we're wasting our time up there. We got enough problems down here. And at first that mentality makes sense until you learn a little more about it. Josh, you like to work with your hand and with tools. Um, what was an innovation or an invention that has helped you greatly when it comes to say working on your car, working around the house on projects with tool wise?
Tool wise,
Yeah. What have you?
anything,
I'm sorry.
anything non-slip, anything that has a textured grip to where you can keep hold of things.
Right. Um, what about things that don't require so much manual labor that's made it easier on you? Can you think of anything there?
The drill.
Right. Power tools, guys. Now, of course, corded power tools we had. NASA developed our cordless power tools in the beginning. Basically, you see what I'm saying? Because in space, it's kind of hard to go on a spacewalk and work on that stuff out there with a big, long power cord running to it. So they had to have batteries to run these drills, and they came up with that. Not only that, Nike tennis shoe, the material that they put in their soles of their shoes was originally developed in NASA's helmets. I mean, things that we use every day. The phone in your camera was developed by NASA. You see what I'm saying? Things that we use every day. Not only that, but we've had major medical, biological innovations that's helped us with, help treating human beings here on the ground, extending our lives and making us more aware of our physiology and biology. Cancer research, things of that nature, crops, the way we grow our food has even been worked on in space. All kinds of stuff, all kinds of benefits to all of us. Not only that, we've also, because of NASA, we also now have GPS satellites. GPS is not some magic device, folks. It's science. There are, I believe, 24 satellites for GPS that are all orbiting around the Earth, and that's what your phone or your GPS device connects to when you're using GPS, and it lets you know where you are pretty accurately. That's pretty amazing stuff when you think about it. These are, like I say, if it weren't for NASA, man, we would be living in, I don't want to say the Stone Age, but it wouldn't be as good as it is now. And I would have to say, and I'm sure there are people who would disagree with me on this, but given the evidence, I don't think there's ever been a greater time to be alive than right now. Now, don't get me wrong, we have our problems, which we've had. But I can tell you, I really do enjoy my indoor plumbing, and not having to shit in an outhouse in the freezing cold of winter. And I enjoy my air conditioning inside when it's hot. Things like that, things that science has brought us, and many things that NASA has either helped or has solely developed. It's been an amazing benefit to everyone, and also research into like things like the climate of the earth as far as climate change. Now, I know we'll have some climate change deniers out there. Again, I understand, but yeah, those critical thinking skills again. I won't get on that tangent again, but when there is a consensus of climate scientists, people who literally do this for a living and spent a huge chunk of their life getting educated on this specific subject, when over 90% of them tell you something, and the only ones that don't are funded by people who want to argue against that for their own political and financial reasons, you can pretty well take that to the bank, folks. And not only that, it's also observable by yourself. Look around. So, sorry. I know I got started on a tangent, but I'll stop there. But thanks to NASA, we know that this is happening. We can see how this is affecting us. And of course, if you don't know there's a problem, you ain't worried about a problem. And I think that sometimes people are, remember how I use the term ignorant. I'm not calling you stupid here, people. I'm saying I'm ignorant of a lot of stuff. Everyone is ignorant of something. Like currently I am completely ignorant as to what's happening in Red Square right now. No idea. I ain't there. All right. So, but I think sometimes people, ignorant simply means to not know. I think some people are literally ignorant of a lot of the problems or issues that face us as a species on the planet, or not just us, but literally every species on this planet. So if you don't know that there's a problem, you're not worried about the problem because you don't even know there's a problem to be worried about. And I highly encourage people to become aware, and it can be a little disconcerting, it can be a little disheartening because they look into it and they're like, oh man, I didn't realize oh man, this is all such bad news. Oh, that sucks. And yeah, but if you know about it, all right, Josh, if you have a problem, if you realize there's a problem, what are the odds that you can do something about it versus you don't even know the problem exists?
It's usually pretty good.
Right. Like if you don't know there's a problem, your odds of actually fixing that problem or doing anything about it are pretty much none. Or very low, very low. You might accidentally do something, but odds are low, guys. And that's really all we got to play is the odds. But sorry, I keep going on these tangents. I know I'm terrible at it. Josh, you gotta help me here. You can reel me back in, bud.
Maintain, brother.
All right, back to our main subject. So NASA, I think we discussed this a little bit in the beginning. Tomorrow is a big day for us as Americans and NASA and SpaceX. And can you tell me why? Do you know what's happening tomorrow?
I believe it's going to be the first manned launch to the International Space Station from United States soil in several years.
Right, since 2011, since we retired the space shuttle, we have been catching rides to the ISS, the International Space Station, with, get this, the Russians. Now, on Russian Soyuz rockets. Now, I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, seeing as how, people are like, wait a minute. Wasn't that who he was talking about? We had a space race in a Cold War with her? Yes, those people. And that's the amazing thing about NASA. NASA and several other space organizations in other countries have put aside their country's politics to work together for all of us. And not, this is NASA included, but as far as anything else, can you think of anything else that people have ever put aside so many differences for to obtain a common goal? That is unreal and awesome. If we could do that on everything, man, can't imagine what the world would be like. A whole lot better, in my opinion. But phenomenally, these space organizations have done it. I've been doing it. Now, at the same time, though, it does kind of stick in our craw as Americans that we haven't had our own ride to the ISS in, several years, about 9 years, or 10 years. 9 years, sorry. Math, terrible. But you think about it. We were the first to land on the moon, and we had all these amazing rockets back in the day. We did all this stuff. Why can we not get our own way to the moon? Why are we relying on our old enemy to get us there? And we're also paying them and funding them to do that. Why can't we do it here? Well, I'll tell you why, Josh. Because unfortunately, as awesome as America is and NASA is, for some reason, and I'm going to go ahead and say it's a political one, several political reasons.
I'll agree.
NASA has just been so underfunded since the space race, since Apollo, that it's really no surprise, guys. I mean, going to space is not cheap. These giant facilities and rockets that we develop cost lots of money. It costs, so much just to get a pound of weight into space. It's either in the thousands or millions, I can't remember, but it's quite a substantial amount. It's, and whenever you take our nation's budget, which we have, and we divvy up between everything, when you take not even 1/2 of 1%, I think it's 0.48% of the federal budget, and that's what NASA runs on, it's not a surprise, folks. I mean, it's not just human exploration that they do. Like I say, they also maintain our satellites, all these rovers that we sent to Mars and other places. You know, I mean, this stuff isn't cheap. So people think, oh well, NASA they get so many billion a year, but yeah, but then that's divvied up between each field that NASA has, human exploration, which is very small funded, rovers, satellites, equipment, other things that they use, facilities, and you know personnel and everything else. It's not a lot. Not a lot. It's not even a drop in a bucket. It's less than a penny on the dollar of the federal budget. That's awful. So I highly encourage you to write your local representatives and Congress people and people in our government and try to see what you can do about helping NASA be funded, because it benefits all of us. And when you take what we spend on, I don't know, defense, yeah, it's yeah, I know, right? Like several times more than any other country on the planet. Now, don't get me wrong, defense is important, and we need to spend money on it. But if you're not even putting a penny in the jar for the only organization that has given us so much, then you are doing yourself a disservice. Sorry about that, folks. You may have a little gap in your audio there. We had some technical difficulties with dogs barking and people going insane. So there will be mass editing in this episode. Sorry about that, but don't worry, we'll make sure you don't miss out on any content. As of the launch that we were talking about, though, for tomorrow, NASA has, which is as you said, the first launch since 2011 from U.S. soil to the International Space Station. We say that's happening tomorrow because this is being recorded currently on May 26th, 2020. So by the time this gets to you as the listener, it may be today or it may have already happened. But if you're getting this on, May 27th, then it's happening today. You can hop on NASA's website and check out the launch. If not, I'm sure there'll be plenty of recaps and you can all go check it out. I highly encourage you to do that. I'm sorry, do what?
Technology.
Yes, it is a great friend and also a foe if you don't use it correctly, which I often don't. But Joshua, what else you want to get on NASA today?
Well, let's hit on kind of what they're doing currently.
Okay.
Maybe touch on where they're going from here.
Okay. Well, as of the NASA website that I have pulled up here, currently there's several missions going on that I highly recommend our listeners hop online on nasa.gov and check out. There's the Artemis program commercial crew, which is happening tomorrow. Like I say, the first launch with SpaceX Falcon 9 from first launch from U.S. soil to the ISS since 2011. Of course, we're working on we still have Hubble Space Telescope in space. They're working on James Webb Space Telescope. There's the Juno mission, the satellite that we have orbiting Jupiter and observing Jupiter. There's always the International Space Station to check out and all the important work that they do on that. There's the InSight Mars lander to check out. There's the Mars Perseverance rover. There's New Horizons, which is Pluto and beyond. Osiris Rex, which is landing on an asteroid. Then there's the Parker Solar Probe, which is observing our sun in the middle of our solar system at a lot closer than we've ever been to the sun before, which is pretty neat. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on, and some of this has been going on and is currently going on, and things that will be going on. Another thing that they have planned is a new satellite. It's named for it's called Mother of Hubble, but it's the Nancy Grace Roman telescope. That they're working. It's in development right now, which is a future mission that'll be pretty cool, and it'll be observing the cosmos in ways that we have never seen it before, which is pretty neat. It's really, really a whole lot of great innovative stuff going on. Also, working aeronautics is always going on at NASA. And a lot of people often forget that's the first A in NASA is aeronautics. And all right, so back to the benefits of all of us as human beings that have to live here. That's another way that NASA helps us out. The fluid dynamics, the aerodynamics that they have been researching and studying throughout the years, they've come up with awesome software and technology that a lot of businesses use that aren't even related to space, such as the trucking industry. If you've ever noticed those flaps on the back of the doors on newer tractor trailers as they're going down the road that make them more aerodynamic in the panels that go underneath the trailer. A lot of people that engineered those used the NASA fluid dynamic software to, develop those kinds of things and help increase fuel economy for the trucks and reduce emissions, things of that nature, to help all of us out and get our stuff here more efficiently and cheaper, which we heavily rely on in current times with the pandemic going on. So I mean, like I said, this is an untold amount of things that NASA has helped, even directly and indirectly, to benefit all of us here on this planet, everyone. But yeah, like I say, I highly encourage anyone that's interested in the NASA missions to hop on their website at nasa.gov and just go to the missions tab and scroll down and read it up and learn what you can. There's also NASA TV where you can watch their broadcasts for launches and things of that nature, and other programming. There's NASA social media. They've got plenty of awesome podcasts that you can listen to and other things. They've got downloads and apps for those and other software. It's also a great place to find out about NASA. This is where we've gotten most of our information from for today's show. And it also provides links for small businesses, because NASA also helps small business do what they do, and educators, teachers teaching students about anything that has to do with, say, math, science, space, any of that. There's a link for you on the NASA website. So I highly recommend that folks check that out. What I am actually looking forward to the most in the future, I think, is one that everyone's been waiting on, some even before, the moon landing, but definitely since the moon landing. And that is a mission, a manned mission to Mars. Current estimates I've heard for that are somewhere around 2030. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we'll hit the goal. I really hope we do. That would be amazing. And like I say, I'm also very stoked about the moon in 2024. I'm hoping that doesn't get delayed. But things do happen, and when you're running on a shoestring budget, it's amazing what they pull off with that budget. But it's hard sometimes. A lot of people get upset and they're like, well, "Why didn't they do that?" Blah blah blah. Well, if someone handed you a $5 bill and said, "Hey, build me a house with the latest technology and smart TVs and all that, could you do it?" That's kind of the scale of what NASA's doing, and they're actually building the house and making it a smart home. That's the kind of stuff they're doing. That's the kind of ingenuity they're working with their very limited budget. Um, but Josh, what is let's see, we're about the same age. Growing up, what was your fondest or most impressing memory of something to do with NASA that you remember? I mean, good or bad?
Well, I was alive when it happened, but I don't remember it. One of the things that always stuck out to me was Challenger,
Oh, yes.
and it is that goes back to what I'm saying, or what I was saying earlier, is everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth,
Yep.
and people a lot of times take the technology we have for granted in everyday life and such like that,
Yep.
and even the massive amounts of technology that went into the shuttle program.
Hmm.
You still have to remember that once you're off that pad,
Your
you
ass
are at
is.
the mercy
Yep.
of physics,
Yep.
and nothing, absolutely nothing, ever goes 100% according to plan.
Oh no. Well,
Things are worse than others.
yeah. The thing with Challenger is that was just it. It was a hard learned lesson in complacency, I believe. Uh, we had been running the shuttle program for a while, and people thought it was just very routine. And it was a one of the SRBs, the solid rocket boosters, on it's the big side rockets on either side of the tank for people who are trying to visualize this. It's the big white long rockets on each side of the big orange tank or red tank. Not sure about my colors. um, One of the seals actually blew out around the bottom of one of those solid rocket boosters, and that it created so much pressure that it just blew out. And it was something that could have been prevented. But of course, when you're running on a shoestring budget and people are putting all this pressure on you, as they were NASA at the time, sometimes things get rushed, overlooked, and unfortunate events can happen. And that was a major unfortunate event that I think really resonated with America for a long time. It put a hold on launches for quite a while after that. And like I say, it just goes to show your point about, human space travel is not something to be taken lightly. It is amazing and innovative and everything we said, but it's also it can be dangerous. Now, we do everything we can, and we have, I believe, the best people in the world working on mitigating those risks, but at the same time they're still present. It's it's Murphy's law. Anything that can eventually will happen. It's an unfortunate event, but yeah, that and Columbia I remember very well.
Columbia, I think, goes to show that no matter how prepared you think you are,
Mm-hmm.
some things just freak accidents. It was a piece of ice, wasn't it? That broke off a tile, fell off the booster and broke the tile off.
Yeah, it was. I know a tile, one of the thermal tiles on the outside of the shuttle that basically insulates the shuttle upon reentry because things get really hot whenever you're moving that fast through air or anything, creating a lot of friction and drag onto the spacecraft itself or the orbiter itself. Broke off and it disintegrated upon reentry. And that was another one. It was probably preventable if they'd have had a little more time, not all this pressure, and a little bit more of a budget to work with to maybe replace those tiles a little more often or pay somebody to inspect them a little bit more thoroughly. I mean, like I say, it's not to be taken lightly as far as this budget goes that I'm talking about, because that could be the difference. It's not the only factor, but it could be the factor between someone living and dying. And in both of those instances, that's part of the factor, the many factors that went into play in each. So, like I say, it's something to say about astronauts and anyone that goes into space. These are, in my opinion, and people may have their own opinions. That's fine. You may disagree with me, and that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But it is my opinion that these people are heroes. They are continuing a long a tradition of not only helping all of us as humans and a planet and as a whole, they're also giving inspiration and dreams to kids. Like, I remember in elementary school, most people remember in elementary school, a teacher may have asked you this question. They may have asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was one of those kids that actually meant it when he said it. Astronaut. That was the answer that came to mind. That's because it was I'd watched, with my parents, taught me a little bit about NASA and space and things of that nature, and I was just infatuated by it. And watching the space shuttle program when I was a kid, it just inspired me to do that. Now, unfortunately, I missed the mark a little bit, but but that's due to my own poor decision making skills through life, I guess. But maybe never too late. We'll see what happens in the future. Um, but still, it's something. Even if kids don't become astronauts, it still leads them in a good direction to be curious about new things, to learn new things about our place in space and science and technology in any field, in mathematics, engineering. It is, like I say, I don't know of a single human being who has not at least once in their life looked up at the stars and just gazed upon them in amazement and wondered about their place in space. I think we've all done that. And if not, give it a shot. Go outside tonight and look up if it's not cloudy. Or, it is amazing to come to the realization of, just how we are, how we got here, where we are, what's going on, in a broad sense of the terms. And NASA, as an organization, has done more to promote those dreams than I'd say anybody. But I mean, I may be wrong. That's in my opinion. But as far as their mishaps, like I say, they do happen, and nothing, as you said, nothing is perfect. But I'd say they have done very well over the years not to have had a lot more accidents and mishaps. Um, like I say, guys, you're riding basically a controlled explosion 62 plus miles up, and doing amazing things out where it's not very hospitable to human life. I mean, you know, you want to know what space is like. Well, you know, there's no air. You'll notice that pretty much immediately. You know, you know, things. It's not, you know, necessarily a place that's very, like I say, hospitable to humans to be in. We are used to being here on Earth, but we wouldn't know the things we know and have developed the things we have developed without NASA, and that's amazing to me. And the fact that they have done so many amazing things, literally taken a human being, actually several human beings, 12 that we know of to be exact, off of this rock that we call Earth, go nearly a quarter million miles, like 238,000 some miles to the moon through a vacuum where there's no air and, you know, nothing, you know, to the moon, landing on the moon, walking around on it, and coming back in the late 60s and early 70s with the technology we had. Who else could have done it?
That's a testament to the bravery of astronauts as well.
Yes.
Because you know that they knew full well, you know, well, let's take into effect, let's take, for example, Apollo 11.
Mm-hmm.
You had Buzz Aldrin,
Mm-hmm.
Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins.
Yep.
These are the three men who were going to make history. Mm-hmm. Each of them for different reasons, but all of them for the same goal. The Apollo rocket, when it was fully fueled, weighed just a tad over 4 million pounds. 4 million pounds.
It's a heavy bird.
They strapped themselves onto the top of that thing. Mm-hmm. That had only been tested maybe 4 or 5 times, and most of that was undocking the lunar rover. Mm-hmm. They got fast enough off of that 4 million pounds in just that 62 miles to break the gravity of Earth, which I'm not sure exactly how fast.
They got into Earth orbit, 17,500 miles an hour to enter low Earth orbit, or somewhere around 17,000 miles an hour. Yeah, I mean, booking it.
It takes me a good 30 feet to stop when I'm walking.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not only that, they were riding the most powerful rockets that have ever flown, you know, in history. Like,
exactly.
The Saturn V rockets produced, I don't know if you're aware of this, but they produced the loudest sound ever produced by man. That should give you a hint about how powerful these rockets were. Like the fact that literally you had to be so many miles away from the launch site and you could still feel it in your chest when it went up. That is, and you know, these guys are riding the tip of that. Exactly. Like you say, this is not what, if you don't do it correctly, a safe thing to do. But of course, they mitigated it the best they could. But even as best they can mitigate it, there's still very much a good amount of risk involved. Like, yeah. Think about it. This has never been done at the time they did it, right? Like,
exactly. So they went, and they knew that if something went wrong, there was no help.
Nope.
There was no way back.
Nope.
Nixon had a speech prepared.
Yeah.
In the event that they could not get off the moon. Mm-hmm. Aldrin and Armstrong went on to be the first humans on the moon.
Yep.
Armstrong was the first off the ladder.
Yep.
Second. A lot of people don't remember Michael Collins. He was the one they left behind. And that man, I would have loved to have sat down and just talked to him for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
He took a picture from the command module. It's called Earthrise.
Yeah, that's Apollo 8 when he took that picture, actually. Yeah, it was before Apollo 11. That was it was before they landed. But you're right. He was on 8. He was on.
He tried to take the same picture to get it better.
Yeah.
And then Apollo 11, when he took that picture of the Earth coming up from behind the moon, mm-hmm. He was the only human in history, alive or dead, who was not in that picture.
Yep.
And I cannot fathom his strength of mental fortitude not to absolutely lose his shit because he was alone
Yeah, and
in every sense of the word.
think about it. Like these guys were literally farther away than any other human being had been from their home planet or home period than anybody has ever been. And to look at those pictures, they are gorgeous. And I say, unfortunately, he didn't land on the moon, but at the time, that's the way where he had the command module, and then the lunar lander went down, and he had to make sure that everything went according to plan, so they could recapture as they launched back off the moon and to safely get home. And it's amazing when you look at it. I'm sorry, do what?
It's just it's a beautiful round, not flat ball.
Weird, right?
I know.
So, but when you look at it, you realize, like when you look at when a teacher in school shows you a globe, you kind of think that's what the Earth looks like. But then you see that picture from the Earth from space, and one of the things that you quickly realize, all those fancy little lines that are all over that globe aren't actually there. That separate us into countries and things like that. It lets you know, like we're all on that little blue white ball, and it lets you know just how fragile that really is and how insignificant a lot of the things we worry about down here are in the grand scheme of things. And that to me just resonates, unbelievably, because you think about it. We've had down here, you got wars and tragedies and genocide and crazy shit going on all the time. But from up there, you realize just how much and sorry, when you're here, you pay attention to our differences. We pay attention to our differences because we're here and with each other all the time. And what that did for me is it showed me really how we're all pretty much stuck on this planet together. And we're all much more alike than we are unalike, in my opinion. So, but, and like I say, if it weren't for NASA, who knows where we would be. I would hate to imagine a world where we didn't have a space program. Matter of fact, Josh, do you know why the dinosaurs went extinct?
Why is that?
Because they didn't have a space program.
Oh,
They didn't have a
oh, you got me.
I mean, think about it. If they'd had a space program, they'd have known that asteroid was coming, damn it.
We could have sent Bruce Willis up there to drill through it.
Oh, Lord.
Anywho, I'm getting way off on the tangent. You would ask if I had any like profound memories of NASA.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you the one that always struck me, besides the ones that we've been talking about, is when they fixed Hubble.
Yeah. Now the mirror on Hubble, yes.
When they launched the Hubble Space Telescope, the most amazing, powerful telescope.
And expensive.
They launched it with the telescope lens ground to the wrong prescription.
Mm-hmm.
Fucked it all.
Mistake.
So, it's a testament to the tenacity of NASA that instead of just saying, well, better luck next time.
Right. Oh shit. Sorry guys, we just lost so many billions of dollars. Yeah. Like I'm not gonna shit all over these organizations by naming them, military, but DOD. Sorry, I named a few. But a lot of times whenever they spend, these organizations, they have a massive budget and they spend all this money on shit. They don't really care too much about it because they know they got a huge budget and they can replace it. Yeah, and everybody shit the bed whenever NASA had the problem. I'm sorry, do what?
It's just frivolous.
Yeah, but NASA didn't even do that. They took their shoestring budget, like that very small, inconceivable budget. Yeah, and first they launched it, even with an error. And then not only did they launch it, they didn't say just screw it, and they went and fixed it. And like I say, I don't know if you understand. This is not a skip and a hop across to your neighbor's house. They had to go out in a freaking space and do spacewalks and work on this thing in an environment that humans aren't naturally supposed to be. You know,
Yeah.
it's
They had to launch, then they had to chase it down.
mm-hmm.
They had to dock with it, with
Mm-hmm.
the control arm of the space shuttle,
Like
bring
I
it
say,
in.
all of this happening over 17,000 miles an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's not for the faint of heart.
no, and it just goes to show what people can do if we just put our minds to it. It just goes to show you what we can accomplish. And NASA and don't get me wrong, I'm not just it's not just NASA. There's been several people that have worked with NASA, but again, NASA is at the heart of most or not all of this. But like I have deep love for the more recent organizations that's coming to be like SpaceX and all that, and they work closely with guess who? NASA, because they're the people who's done it. They're the people who knows what's going on, and they work together to do amazing things. And like I say, if it weren't for the shitty budget, NASA could have done a lot of this stuff a long time ago. A lot of people wonder why haven't we landed on Mars yet? A lot of people don't even realize we haven't landed on Mars yet. No, guys, sorry, we landed rovers on Mars, yes, but there's never been a human land on Mars yet. Why? Well, first of all, it takes a lot of information and to figure out how to do it. So you have to research that. And how do you research that? Well, you got to find space, and that's not cheap. And why haven't we figured that out and went? Well, because there hasn't been the budget to do it. That's the reason we have not funded that. If NASA had the budget that the Department of Defense has, we would have been to Mars like decades ago, like right after the moon. I mean, we would have done so much more. I can't say where we would be now, but I can say in which direction forward we would be exponentially greater in our progress of space exploration as a whole. But unfortunately, I say it all comes down to funding, and unfortunately, the people that run that are politicians and people and the electorate. Now, that ain't to shit on the electorate, but this is the reason being informed is important, because if you're ignorant, you don't know there's a problem, and if you don't know there's a problem, most of the time the odds are very low you're going to be able to do a damn thing about the problem. So, sorry, another tangent.
It's what we do.
So I highly encourage people, and that's another thing. Go to a launch if you can. Go to NASA. You can visit any of their facilities. You can go down to Kennedy Space Center during launch, and and explore. Even when there ain't a launch, it's an awesome place to go see. Go down to Huntsville, Alabama. Go to Rocket City there. I mean, where you can go to see it where they test and develop rockets there at Rocketdyne and places like that. Houston, go to Johnson Space Center and walk around. It's amazing. Like you can learn so much and see how they do and have done it in the past, and how they will do things in the future. All on this, like I say, very unbelievable budget. That is way too small. It's amazing. I highly encourage people to do that. Take their families, and if you can, I mean, I understand. Believe me, I can't just up and take a trip off cross country myself because I'm not a rich guy either. But at the same time, if you find the means to do that, it's one of the greatest things you could do for your children and yourself and whoever you take with you to see, because it informs you, and the best way to spread information is through communication. And if you go and you think it's cool and you learn all this stuff and you learn what NASA does for us, you go home, you tell somebody else, they tell somebody else, and it just spreads on from there and networks. And that's how you gain a much more informed electorate and hopefully get NASA a little bit better of a budget, because the one they have now is just beyond ridiculously small. So, sorry, tangent again. I am all about the tangents today, everyone. I'm sorry. But, point stands. And Josh, I haven't pointed this out to our fans yet, or our listeners yet. If anyone ever hears me or Josh or I refer to one another as either Dutch or Branch, that is our nicknames for each other. And sorry about that ahead of time, because I don't know how many times I've done that now, but I'm sure it's happened and people are like, who the hell is Dutch? Josh is Dutch. Who am I, Josh?
You're Branch.
I'm Branch. It's just nicknames we have at work, came up with for each other. So if you ever hear that being referred to, there's no one else here. It's just us. And that's who's who. Kevin is Branch. Josh is Dutch. But we'll try to stick to actual first names. But every now and again, it's hard to do because we like to play around, have a good time. And, we hope you enjoyed that as well. And don't think we're just, silly damn goofballs, but maybe true. But you know what? Like, that's like your opinion, man. Well, Josh, what are you thinking? What do you want to get on? What haven't we covered? Probably all kinds of shit, I know, but I mean,
I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Well, that being said, it seems like maybe that's a good place to leave it for now. And, and hopefully people will email us. We highly recommend you do that. If you have any questions or have any recommendations for content for the show, want us to answer anything, feel free to email us. It's the root of all stuff, one word, @gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook at the root of all stuff. We have a page and a group. We recommend that you comment on the page or message us and let us know. We appreciate everyone listening. Josh, do you have anything to add for our listeners?
I do not. Thank you for listening. Hope that we enlightened you a little bit.
Hope we didn't bore you and make you go insane with all my ridiculous tangents. I know. I'm sorry. It's me.
That's the best kind of knowledge and stuff you didn't think you needed to know.
That is true. That is true. Wise words, sir. Well, Josh, thank you for joining me again today, my trusty co-host.
My pleasure.
And to everyone out there in podcast land, thank you for listening. And everyone have a good day. Stay safe. And please remember to check out NASA if you get a free chance. And please remember to stay safe during this pandemic. Remember, social distancing, as we've covered in previous episodes, still in effect. We'll get on maybe that issue on the next episode, but I won't hop on another tangent here at the end. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And everybody stay safe and have a good time. Josh, peace out, me brother.
Yes, sir.